reckon I would have been about 17 when I first joined a group called ADA, and they'd set up a branch of this organisation in Gympie. And yeah, I've been a member for many years. I dropped out for a while and I'm now again joined up and a proud member of this group because they've done so much good work for wild deer across this country. However, there's been an underlying, I call it the rot, that's in there. There is a belief within some of the people of the organisation that I've run into over the years that their rights to the wild deer of this country overrides even the rights of landowners. At that stage in my life, because of the beef depression, Dad had decided to go into cropping on our property. So he and I were putting in about 500 acres of sorghum, corn, wheat, barley, whatever we could, rotating from summer crops to winter crops to try and make ends meet. And all of a sudden, we had a mob of nearly 200 deer arrive on our property, and the damage they did to our crops was something you had to see to believe. Now, Dad was an old deer culler from New Zealand, so for him to kill 200 deer was not a big task. So he put it to me. He said, we've either got to farm these deer or we've got to kill the lot. And it wasn't long after that, we had a couple of Kiwi characters arrive at our property, John Dennis and John Oakes. And their plan was to bring a Hughes 500D helicopter into the area and start catching deer for the lucrative deer market. And they offered me the job as a jumper in the back seat. And my job was to bail out and bulldog deer after they'd been netted, tie them up, hook them under the machine, and yeah, the jack of all trades in the back. Deer at that stage were worth over $2,000 a piece. This was back in 79, 78, 79, 80. Crazy money when you think of it, of what $2,000 would buy you back then. That gives them a value of between $5,000 and $10,000 each in present day currency. So landowners that have just come through the beef depression, when we saw cattle sell for as low as $1 each, or people were shooting them in the paddock because they couldn't afford the cartage to get them to market. We'd just gone through those times in the mid-70s. And all of a sudden, here's these wild deer that were running on a landowner's private property that were worth gold. All of a sudden, landowners were putting up traps, and we started catching with the helicopter, and all hell broke loose. Some of the bitterness that was presented towards myself at that time has never ever gone away. And here we are 40 years down the track, and still the old resentments, the old hatred is still there. And at this age of 17, I got confronted by a couple of guys that arrived to our farm up here, our property. So I sat down and wrote a little poem. I'd like to recite it for you tonight because I think it holds just as true today as what it did back then. There was this fella from the Big Smoke. He called in my place one day. He was heading up the bush somewhere, so he called in on his way. He said he was an ADA man, and he said they owned the deer. They'd been put into the bush for them down round Cresbrook somewhere. Then he proceeded to put the bite on me, the rights to stalk and hunt my land. But he coughed and he swore and he spluttered when I told him my demands. I said that he could hunt my land for a fair and an honest fee. He told me then to go to hell. He'd jump my fence for free. He said I had no right to commercialise the deer. Then he relented. He became as nice as pie. He tried to con me with a beer. Now it's true, we don't mind a hare or two, a rabbit or a stag up on the hill. But when down on the crops they fall, just who then pays the bills? Do we put up with them look after them, provide crops, pastures and a sheltered tree, just so you at your whim and your leisure can come and hunt for free? And forget not the cost of Easter, when honest men's morals fail, when the roaring stag starts the sickness and widespread madness prevails, when stock is shot and fences cut and blatant lies are spread, the stockman swears at the echoed shot and he wishes all the deer were dead. For if there were no deer, there'd be no trouble or strife. The poacher would have to pick up a golf club. No more pickups on Easter nights. So what of these deer, I ask you? My mob, 200 strong. Just to whom do I address the bill? Just to who do they belong? Now fair is fair, I reckon. You can't have it all your bloody way. If you're not prepared for middle ground, they simply won't be here one day.